Hello everyone, my name is Angela Sims and excuse me, and I am a doctoral candidate in the Sociology department, and it is my honor and my pleasure to present to you how to protect your middle class status, lessons from the Black American experience. The takeaway for today is taxes are societal nutrition. Just as this chicken is providing you the protein to keep your muscles strong, the vitamin C and the broccoli is helping you to fend off that virus you hope from your roommate, the vitamin A and the sweet potatoes are keeping your eyes clear, so are taxes the mechanisms, the vehicles through which we provide for our basic needs every day. So we can think about taxes as the public tools for building our quality of life. We can think about the schools, K through 12 public schools that many of us attended prior to coming to Penn. We can think about the roads by City Hall. My gosh, maybe you're in the back of an Uber and you fall into one of those man-eating holes and splash your drink all over your face. We can think about the fact that we eat out a lot and we hope that someone's inspected for safe food handling practices. And so we know that these things are important at the same time that we know under the neoliberal age from the 1970s forward that there have been fewer and lower quality government services. And so what that means is that we've been asked to consume in the market to meet our basic needs. So that assumes that we have resources, right, income, household and individual income, and that we live proximate to markets that can provide for those goods and services for daily life. And at the local level specifically where governments are seeking to meet their residents' needs, because they're not receiving as much state and federal revenue, they're more dependent on commercial development. So we can think about the recent fight for HQ2, right? And the fact that even New York has changed its mind, or at least Amazon has pulled out of the deal. So we know that this is important for over the long-term trend that's important. We also see that there are effects by race and place, that groups of people and places have different levels of investment over time. A key aspect of this is racial residential segregation. So here we see a redlining map in New Orleans where African Americans are residing. They're forcibly segregated by whites. And so we can think about the fact that actually African Americans' experience show you what happens when you don't see adequate investment in public goods and services. In fact, I contend the canary in the coal mine. They're warning us what in fact can happen when we underinvest in our infrastructure and other basic goods and services. So the context I want to give you before I proceed to describing the study that I did, the findings and the implications, is the context of what happened in the 20th century, whereby African Americans saw a broadening of the opportunity structure in terms of their capacity to participate fully in American life. So starting with the Great Migration, we see 6 million Blacks leave the South, about half the South's population. Blacks settle in northern and western cities. They are forcibly segregated, but they do get access to the industrial economy. We also have the modern civil rights movement toward mid-century, where there are federal protections, the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, the Fair Housing Act. And by the 2000s, with African Americans having college degrees, white-collar jobs, they are majority middle class and majority suburban. So in light of our interest in racial equity, spatial equity, and the context that I just gave you, I asked for my dissertation research this question: to what extent are Blacks' experiences in a suburban jurisdiction the same as those of whites? The data I use is based on an ethnography of Prince George's County, Maryland, which is a suburb of Washington, D.C. So this is Prince George's right here. It is the jurisdiction with the largest concentration of African Americans in the country. I did a 2-year observation of budget and policy development processes, 58 interviews with leaders and residents, and analysis of public data, including census and county budget reports. So what did I find? Well, I found that homes appreciate more slowly in Prince George's County, and this is important because a key part of your tax base is the value of homes, right? This is the tax rate is based on a base, and so the consequence of that is that Prince George's County receives fewer resources, less revenue compared to neighboring counties, majority white counties, and that means for its residents that they get about $2,000 less per person spent on the public goods and services they need every year. They receive less tax revenue, and so this means $2,000 less per year for residents. So it's about $3,500 in Prince George's County, and it's about $5,500, say, in Fairfax County and Montgomery County. So these are two neighboring counties. And so what ends up happening then is that there are huge budget trade-offs that are made in terms of things that are, in terms of multiple things that are worth funding. So we can think about deciding between, do we build more homeless shelters to support families that are downwardly mobile, or do we spend money to increase the pay of our teachers so that we keep the most experienced teachers in our classrooms? And so the way in which they become, and so consequently, the downstream effect of this is that Prince George's County, because they're embedded in a region, they become the sink for the negative externalities of gentrification. So we can think about Washington, D.C. It used to be Chocolate City, right? Now Derek Hyra calls it a cappuccino city. It might be vanilla pretty soon, who knows? But the point is that these people being displaced go somewhere. And so what happens is Prince George's County receives a disproportionate share of the region's high needs groups. And so that means that they're stretching an already small tax base comparatively among more people. And so this leads to a vicious cycle. Because they cannot attract high income residents, they cannot attract high-end commercial development, they cannot expand their tax base. Because they cannot expand their tax base, they receive more people that can afford to get into Prince George's County and then spread their budget thinner and thinner. And so we can see that the quality of life tax burden ratio is less competitive. So what are the lessons for you if you're trying to maintain your middle class status? What's in it for you? Well, what's in it for you is to think about supporting your tax increases, right? So I know we just passed a massive federal tax cut, but you might reconsider whether or not that was such a good thing, right? We know that taxes enable everyone's well-being. We know that they reduce downstream demand. If you have a high-quality education now, you're more likely to have a job later that pays a living wage. We know that it limits your risk limits our risk from market volatility. We had a great recession. We saw that there were uneven effects. Government helps to stabilize these kinds of shocks. We also know that we should question market capacity to sustain public goods. It's not a given that profit-motivated entities are looking to maintain long-term public interests. We also need to account for underinvestment legacies in groups of people. I mentioned African Americans in particular. And we also need to think about jurisdictions within regions. The ways in which your embeddedness within a region means that you could become the weakest link. And you don't have to be the black county or the majority minority county. It could be any county in a region that ends up becoming the sink. And thus in a vicious cycle. So I submit to you again that African Americans are the canary in the coal mine. They are warning you of what happens when you do not invest adequately in public goods and resources. So the canary is tweeting, taxes are societal nutrition. Thank you.